Welcome to Artists in Residences, the Westport Library's virtual artist series. I'm Carol Erger-Fass, and I'm the exhibit curator at the library. Today, Miggs Burrows talks with artist Darcy Hicks. Darcy grew up in Westport and received her Bachelor of Fine Arts at Smith College. She went on to get a Master of Education, and she's been an elementary school teacher as well as an art teacher right here in Westport. Darcy uses a variety of mediums, from oil paint to gold leaf to mirrors to animal skulls. And she often invites an intimate relationship with the viewer by creating art that's enhanced by movement, letting the transient effects of light and reflection play a role on the surfaces of her pieces. So let's join Miggs in his home and Darcy in her Westport studio, and she can tell us more about her work and what she's been up to during the COVID crisis.
Well, thank you, Carol, and thanks again to the library for this great opportunity. I think it's Carol's innovation to do this artist in residences, and it's been a wonderful thing for me personally because I get to kind of do studio invasions where I wouldn't ordinarily be able to knock on somebody's door and say, let me in. We've got a lot of questions for you. But and welcome, Darcy.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Personally, I mean, you're one of the most, I think, engaged people I know in town. I mean, you're a wife, mother, teacher, activist, artist, astronaut. It goes on and on and on. And you have a lovely studio there. So I guess we could just start by you giving us a kind of a little tour of the studio if you can, and then we can get into specific stuff you're working on.
I'll try not to be too wobbly with the laptop, and I'll sort of show you around a little bit. Of course, I'm going to skip the really, messy areas.
That's all right.
But well, the one thing I do love about this studio, it's been here since around 1890. It was part of a larger farm, and it was already on, it's separate from the house, which is really nice when you have, when we moved here, I had little kids. So it was very nice to be able to leave the house, but not leave the property or not be far away from them. So it's connected to a greenhouse. So I'll just quickly show you what I get to be attached to.
Wow.
This is, especially now in the time of COVID, this is my victory garden. Grow a lot of our own food in here and everything. And it's sort of a nice ambiance to be next to when I'm doing my artwork.
So you can go in there and nibble on ferns in between work.
I'm hungry. I don't have to ever go in the house if I don't want to. And then, so I guess I'll just show you some of the artwork that I have. So this is a new piece. This is a sculpture that I've been working on for about 9 months. I finally finished. And I'm just going to walk you around it. It's called 12 Women. And that's a piece that I've been working very hard on, and it's sort of taken on different iterations depending on what is going on in the world. I have lots of signs around that I made actually decades ago when I was teaching art at Kings Highway, and kept them because I find them to be just as helpful for me as they were for the kids that I taught. You'll also see I have lots of skulls. I love animal skulls, and you'll see that a lot in my art. All my sketches and everything, I tend to just sort of tack up. They rotate around a lot. I have a tree series that I'm working on, looking up at trees and trying to capture the light. Pretty much all my art is about trying to engage the viewer in interacting with the light, the transient light that happens around us.
Can I ask what the fascination with skulls is? I mean, obviously they have their own.
I used to be obsessed with Georgia O'Keeffe, and of course she does a lot of skulls. And there's something about, and then I went to New Mexico, and I actually collected some skulls and brought them back on the airplane back before we were I'm going to move over here so I can demonstrate something in a minute. Oh, here's a whole bunch of skulls, actually. I don't know if you caught those.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
They all watch me while I'm
Oh my God.
while I'm doing my work.
Unnerving. Yeah.
They're just watching.
Like a Gary Larson cartoon come to life.
They're not unnerving to me. They're like my friends. I should name them. Yeah, I was able to, it was before 9/11, and I was able to take a bunch of skulls back with me on the airplane, just sitting in my lap from Santa Fe, or from outside of Santa Fe from a hike a long time ago, and put them in my art room at Kings Highway. And the kids loved them and just gravitated towards drawing them because of the form and the, it's the same as the human body. Anything that comes from life is very beautifully organically shaped, and there are patterns, but then there's predictability, but then there's also this sort of shapes you can't name, and I just find that to be just really beautiful. I love the smoothness of them, and in the past few years I got really into painting on the skulls because I found the surface of the skulls to be the perfect canvas. They are the perfect paint surface. And something about having it be right on this part of their heads where you think of your thoughts coming from there, made it interesting to paint things on there.
Do you have to prime them with anything? You just paint directly? Yeah.
Paint directly on them.
No skull primer or Jerry's art.
Usually I do some gold leafing or silver leafing, but I do that anyway on a canvas. So that's really more for the effect rather than for the preparation of the surface.
Right. There's a lot of life drawings you were telling me earlier about what's going on now. This is part of what's happening with the COVID kind of art reinvention, right? Life drawings.
Before the quarantine, I was actually, this year was my first year as an empty nester. And so the first thing I did was sign up for art classes again in the city. And I was going in and to the Academy of Fine Arts, and I had the opportunity finally to draw nude models, live models, which, that's the one thing that's really hard to do. Like, it's hard to get someone to come and take their clothes off in my studio.
Yeah, I find that I have the same problem. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know, maybe other people have an easier time with it, but I missed it a lot because it was part of my training, and I feel like it's really important to keep drawing and painting the human body. And so as soon as the kids were gone, I signed up. I had about 6 weeks out of a 12-week class and painted, the form behind me, this beautiful woman. I had her for 3 hours every Wednesday in the same exact pose. It was such a luxury. And then it was just, we were all home. So now what they have, and what's really become a sort of a funny offshoot from the COVID crisis, is this whole art world on Zoom. And it's of course it's not as good as being in the room with a live model, but it's not as distant as I thought it would be. And so if anyone's interested in doing it, actually, there's a group called Distanced Drawing, which you can find on Instagram, and it's $15. You get a model. It's in her studio in New York who needs to pay the rent. So you're really helping people who would otherwise be doing this for a living and who now can't. And everybody gives them a little money through Venmo, and they do all the same poses they would do in the art room. They do 2-minute quick sketch poses and build up to longer poses. They're very good. They're very good at holding their pose, but they also play with lighting, and they're real pros. So I've been able to delve into that, like on a nightly basis. After dinner, I come to the studio and draw live models on Zoom for a couple of hours. So that's been a nice perk.
Yeah.
Continue.
So you have, actually, we previously, I've known you for a little while, not well, but enough. And the topic of gold leaf came up, and you're the only other person since my father, when I was a kid, my father used to gold leaf. He didn't use it in his artwork. He was an illustrator, but he did it for friends, and he would gold leaf. He would, carve things and gold leaf them. And there was this gold leaf is an amazing thing. And you are an artist that uses gold leaf, and I find it so fascinating from my childhood memories of how it was done.
I'm still fascinated by it.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And I don't remember when and how I discovered it. I just know that I was really wanting very much to have my paintings be very interactive with the viewer. And that's what I've always liked about your art, which is, the idea that in order to really, a photograph can't capture it. You really have to be with your art in order to sort of see the transition of one image to another. And the lenticulars are obviously very different from what I do, but that idea of light catching a surface is the same kind of thing, where you do have to move side to side or up and down in order to get the full effect.
It changes, yeah. And then it engages the viewer as a collaborator.
I get really frustrated with photographs because, in fact, I'm still working on my website because I've always been so critical of any photograph of my artwork, because it's like, yeah, but unless there's a video where you're moving around and taking the time to do that, you're not really seeing at all what I made. So,
but I can, whenever you want, I can jump to a video too that you supplied.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I did supply. I'm putting on my gold leaf gloves because, as you mentioned, it is the thinnest, most gossamer-like, frustrating surface. And first, I'll show you what it looks like finished. I have a couple of panels here that are sort of typical. This is a panel that I gold leafed. It's dry. It's been gold leafed and varnished. And here's one in silver leaf, which I also love because it tarnishes. If it's real silver, it tarnishes. So it's got a little bit of gold in there too over time. And actually that changes over a longer arc of time, because the painting as it sits in your house becomes more and more tarnished. The silver part, a little golder. Anyway, here's some gold leaf just to illustrate what you were talking about. They come in these like packets, and each packet has a piece of tissue in between each.
I mean, what's so odd is we're so used to, as a kid being introduced to Fort Knox and gold ingots and all this, and then you come across this. It's just bizarre.
It is, and kids are fascinated by it because they're like, that can't be real gold.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it is. It's like, it's 22 karat. You can get it in any karat, but and they have imitation too. But this is how it looks on the sheet, and I'm going to just sort of blow on it so you can see how fragile.
Oh my God. Yeah, look at that.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very, and then it immediately, and the reason I have gloves on is because if you touch it with your skin, you have oil on your skin. It literally just sinks into your skin, and it's then useless. And this actually is edible. So.
Yeah, I've heard things of people putting gold on food. You can, yeah.
Yeah. I don't usually get the edible kind, but there's been a shortage. So as there is with everything right now. So what I'm going to do, do you want me to demonstrate how I use it?
Absolutely.
If I can.
Sure.
Do this. Oh, does that work?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a very simple, obviously, version of how I would do this, but I use oil paint. This is black oil paint that I use, just regular. I'm going to put a little bit of Galkid light medium in there to kind of loosen it up and make it less thick. And after I've gold leafed or silver leafed, and then let it dry, and then varnished it so that it's kind of protected from the roughness that I'm going to now put on the canvas, I'll paint it. Sometimes I paint an actual thing, but obviously because we're doing this online, I'm gonna just do a little part of it just to kind of show you an idea. So once this is just an example of how I might do, like, I'm gonna do birch trees. So if I were covering the whole thing, and I won't bother doing that right now, I use all different kinds of tools to get the silver back. So I'll paint something, and then what happens is I use things like, little rubber tools and things that, come in all different shapes and sizes, or the back of a paintbrush, or, anything, steel wool, depending on the effect I want. And then you can just scrape right back through to get, the effect.
Oh, yeah.
Very simple version of a bunch of trees. And then, obviously, you can play with,
yeah. Right. And then they have that glimmer.
Go back in with paint and the whole thing. And then, obviously, you can take all sorts of tools, even the same tools, to sort of,
work over it. Yeah.
Yeah, work over it.
Yeah, look at that.
And start to get the effect of birch trees.
Very cool. Do you want me to show the finished birch tree?
Yeah. Especially since that one is way better than what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, but it shows. That's so great that we can see the.
And you can see that I actually did.
Is this coming through? You can see the.
Yeah, I can see that.
So is there gold leaf coming? Is it silver or gold leaf coming through?
That one is silver leaf.
Yeah, okay.
The birch trees, I tend to do silver leaf. And it all depends if I'm trying to get more of a sun effect or like a water effect. I do it with all sorts of different surfaces. And, and in nature, there are just so many surfaces, from leaves to bark to water to sunlight that are affected by light in a way that I just don't feel like paint colors can possibly capture. I think it's a great challenge to try, but I often feel like, the metallic underneath is really, I also like the process of digging. I was in college, I had a teacher who said, "You really like to dig." I really did. I was like scraping away and digging back down and trying to uncover the surface of the page somehow, and bring it back and sort of discover things that way rather than always.
Yeah, and also it's never the same piece twice, depending on the lighting and where the person's standing. Right? There's a different.
And depending on where you hang it. I mean,
yeah.
It's I'm constantly moving paintings around in my house because they become so different depending on what room or what direction they're facing. Well, this one is that's looking up into the trees. That's part of sort of a series. That's on gold leaf. And I sometimes speckle gold leaf back in. But you can see on the trunk of the tree there, that is scraped through to get the gold. It's so ironic because sometimes I will spend a fortune and a lot of time gold leafing the entire canvas like I just showed you. And then in the end, it's like maybe 5% of the canvas has the gold revealed, but I don't plan my paintings well enough to know where I'm going to need it.
Sure. So. Now here, are you gold leafing? What are you doing here?
Yeah, that I decided to just put everything together and gold leaf a skull. And that is a bull skull that I got from a rancher in Wyoming. And so I covered it in gold leaf. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it. And I think that might be the one that I made into the bullfighting scene, which...
this one?
Yes. I think maybe not, because it looks like the gold doesn't go all over. But that's the kind of thing that I do on the skulls, where I really was trying to capture what it's almost like what I end up doing with these bulls is try to capture their past lives, or their things that they saw or would remember. Or sort of, I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe and very otherworldly.
Well, that would be the last thing they remembered seeing, I guess. That's it's a
little sad.
Poignant,
but, yeah. I mean, I have one that I think I sent you a video of a calf coming and running, and I think of it as the mother of the calf looking at the calf, and remembering.
Oh, right. I don't know if I have that one. I have this. This is like a really interesting view of zebras.
Yeah. My brother used to live in Africa, or sometimes still does, and I spent some time there, and love animals, love painting animals, love the sort of the fierceness of their everyday movements. This is just all they're doing is itching themselves in the sand,
Oh, right.
picking up a lot of dust. And
Yeah.
the dust, catches the light. You know how when you see dust even coming in the window, it can look like glitter.
Sure.
That really got me right away realizing I needed to paint that. So
yeah, I love the little highlights of his. It's not a beard, but the little fuzz on his chin.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can you see it now? Moving the video?
Yep.
Okay. So this is a piece you've been working on for a long time.
Right. This is 12 women. And this started with, it started around the time that Kavanaugh was,
Yes.
became part of our, our
vernacular. Yeah.
and a decider in our fate. And I was just thinking a lot about women's place in this world, and how we have to work and climb and continue to help each other and pull each other up and pull ourselves up every day, every minute. And I just wanted to capture that. I couldn't figure out how to do it in a painting. And so I just started working with clay, and I started with one figure and then another. And then I thought, well, I have to climb on something. So I ordered this big globe and ended up with a dozen of them. And over time, so much happened, obviously, in the past year that, different things would be in my mind as I was working with these figures, sort of striving to get out of the muck, and trying to succeed in something.
Yeah.
And I do feel like it's a hopeful piece that they're getting to the top. They're pulling each other together. They're all different sizes, shapes of women, and I tried to show different races and ethnicities as well. And not that you can tell from the gold leaf, but you kind of can. So I think that to me, it actually was a really feel-good piece, and helped me to kind of process some of the frustration.
It's extremely powerful. And I'm just, in terms of the process, what did you use models, or have you taken anatomy classes? I mean, they're so fully formed. And no?
Oh, thanks. No, I did start rock climbing this year, and I think I just was paying attention a lot to like my own muscles and what they do when I'm rock climbing. And also I think a lot of this figure drawing stuff that I was doing and I'm still doing actually helped, even though it's two-dimensional. Just really studying the human form through sketching helped me, and just getting the clay in my hand, it just sort of came naturally to start forming the muscles where they needed to be. I mean, I'm sure an anatomist would look at these and find a lot of little, incongruities, but I just wanted it to be believable enough to be, people climbing up, women climbing up, and pulling each other up and looking like there was a struggle. And I was also really influenced by, I went on my junior year abroad to Italy, and I lived in Florence, and I was near the Accademia where Michelangelo's David is. And most of the students never went in there because it was just mobbed with tourists trying to get to the Michelangelo, trying to get to the David. But along the route to see the David, there are all these beautiful, beautiful, lesser crowded, not as crowded sculptures of his slaves called schiavi in Italian. And they're not unfinished, but they look unfinished because they're just blocks of marble with, the beginnings of these slaves that they're supposed to look encased in this rock. And they're sort of, they've been polished. Part of their bodies are sort of polished and pulling out, and you see their muscles straining against the rocks. And yet you also, right off of that, you'll see the chisel marks and sort of the very beginnings of renderings of them, and then it sort of turns into just the rock. And so you get to see the process, and I was obsessed with them. And I used to sit and sketch them constantly. And I used to think, if I ever sculpt, this is the kind of sculpture I want to do. And so when I did this, I really made sure to have these women sort of partially in the unpolished and unfinished material at the bottom, sort of climbing out of it and becoming formed. So that was sort of a small influence in what I was doing there. So
yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about kids.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
Because I don't think I could ever like happily be an artist without children in my life, not just my own children who I love dearly, but children in general as art students. I just think that they have a way of looking at the world that is so hopeful and beautiful and real and unpretentious. And as an art teacher, I was so lucky to be able to do that for so long. Now that I'm not in the school system per se, I'm working for Unload as the art director, which both you and I have worked with Unload, which is a group that uses art to have discussions and get people to think about gun violence. And my particular job is to run the sort of youth component of it and to work with kids. Right now I've been working with kids in Bridgeport who have been affected in some way by gun violence, which pretty much every kid in Bridgeport has, and are certainly affected by poverty and all the inequities of our world, especially now. And I'm continuing to work with them and do things with them online. And their freshness and their ability to sort of say, okay, I know what I'm going to do about, George Floyd. I know what I'm going to do with my feelings. I need a canvas and I need painting and I need paints and can I do this? And so this sort of connection with them has helped me really realize how incredibly important art is throughout the worst times and the worst experiences that we have, both personally and on more of a national or even international level. And I see it right now with the coronavirus, with violence happening and racism and social and economic inequity. I see that art is a way for us to sort of have a conversation and put our differences aside and look at something that sort of levels the playing field a little bit. And the kids constantly remind me of this, that they, even though they can't vote yet, they nobody asks them for their opinions. Nobody puts them on a pedestal and asks them to tell us, hey, what's going on in Bridgeport? What are your lives like? But through art, they can have that agency. And so I think the more we can find ways to do that, the better. And I guess I want to tie that into my gratitude to what you're doing and to the Westport Library as well, because I think that Westport is a really, really shining example of, and I know I sound like I'm like running for mayor or something, but I just think that, I grew up in this town, and it isn't until you leave Westport and then come back that you realize how special the art community is here, the friends I have that are artists, and the just patrons of art and people who understand that that's the one thing that can keep us whole and human and connected. And it makes our community work, even when we don't see it happening. So I just think that that's a great thing. I feel very fortunate for many reasons, but that's one of the reasons.
Well, thank you. That was a beautiful way to end this, which went by too fast. But yeah, art definitely has the power to heal and comfort and give people voice. Instead of throwing a rock, they can dip a paintbrush and do something that says a lot more. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Darcy. It was really extraordinary.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you all for at the library, and thanks everybody for being art aficionados.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I've got to say, the way that you just articulated the importance of art and what it means to Westport and the greater society in such a moving and real way it's really was quite amazing. And I thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. I can't believe that
yeah.
in this time of COVID, I got a sentence out that made sense. That's a rarity. You caught me after coffee or something, I guess.
No, we really, it's really appreciated. Thank you so much for joining us. And just to wrap up, for more information about all things about the library, including if you want to see more of our Artist in Residences videos, check out westportlibrary.org. And thanks again, and hope we get to see you at the library soon.
I hope so too. Thanks.